Did anyone else freak out when this scene happened? I know I did. The Owl House is really good and I love it. There are many things I could talk about regarding this show. I could talk about Ida's curse, and the way that it can be read as an analogy to mental illness, often leaving her exhausted and unable to perform magic, and how it becomes easier to manage with the help of available medicine. I could talk about the Emperor, and how he rose to power through unfounded claims of divine right, and now uses his position to limit the capabilities of other magic users, making sure no one is ever given enough potential to challenge him. I could talk about the magic system itself, and how the Coven division is relatively recent if compared to the Age of the Isles, and how it's regarded as the norm nowadays, but there's no inherent need to force people to pick a magic track, and how this division is only meant to reduce the power of magic users and keep them under control. But no, I'm gonna talk about the gay part. So let's dive into this world of magic and feels because I want to talk about the Owl House. The story of the show is quite simple. Our protagonist, Luz Noceda, is a human with a taste for fantasy. Instead of going to summer camp, she finds her way into the Boiling Isles, a place ruled by magic. There, she befriends Ida the Owl Lady, who agrees to train her in the art of spellcasting, and also becomes a student of Hexite School of Magic and Demonics. Stories centered around characters who grew up in a human world getting the chance to study magic at a cool wizard school are nothing new, and the reason for it is that those stories are super fun, please keep them coming. And just like any other story that's been done a dozen times before, what sets it apart from the rest are its own spins and quirks that are added to the formula. If we care enough about the plot and the characters, it's easy to follow them anywhere. In the case of Luz, her upbeat vibe and her determination make it very easy for us to like her and want her to succeed. Her friendship with Ida and the other Hexite students also feels very natural. The most interesting relationship to me, however, is between Luz and Amity, her rival/love interest. My goal is to explore how this pairing is developed and why it works as well as it does. And I swear that it being gay is like only half the reason. First, we need to take a look at Luz. Right from the start, she is characterized by two key factors. She loves magic and she doesn't fit in. The reason why she was being sent to summer camp was so that she could learn to control her own creativity, something that her mother really wanted to happen. Even if the magic-ridden universe of the Boiling Isles is much more similar to a place that Luz would consider ideal, she doesn't exactly fit in there either, precisely because she is a human. Part of her initial connection with the Owl Lady is very much tied to the fact that they are both outcasts. Ida because she doesn't belong to a coven, and Luz because she is an outsider. Ida states that weirdos should stick together, and Luz ends up carrying this message with her for the rest of the show. The other friends she makes, for instance, are also considered misfits. Willow is constantly bullied by her classmates, and Gus is looked down upon for being younger than his peers. Ironically, this friend group brings Luz an immense sense of belonging, precisely because of the notion that they don't belong anywhere else. She would do anything to defend her allies, constantly challenging their opposers despite barely being able to do magic, never hesitating to fight if it means helping someone she cares about. Meanwhile, Amity is her polar opposite. While Luz struggles to make even the faintest ball of light, Amity has a great talent for magic, which has been encouraged from a very young age, helping her become one of the most talented apprentices on the Isles. She comes from a good family and has no trouble fitting in. She is popular, well-adjusted, and well-regarded, and so are the people in her social circle. If Luz always says what she's thinking and wears her heart on her sleeve, Amity hides it under 7 layers of passive aggressiveness, constantly making snide remarks and snarkily berating her enemies, all without losing her cute sarcastic grin. This kind of snooty antagonist is as common as the concept of magic schools, and while they're an interesting source of conflict, they usually don't get much space to develop. At first, it seems like that's everything Amity is going to be. She immediately sees Luz as a rival, because Luz is everything Amity is not, and represents what Amity has been raised to hate. And if that's where the story ended, it would seem a bit shallow. It would bring a lot of conflict to the table, and it would still be fun, but shallow nonetheless. Except Amity isn't as two-dimensional as she first appears, and Luz also isn't as perfect as we might think, and the show takes great care to explore how these characters evolve, as well as how their relationship changes with them. This is developed over the course of a full season, but there are 3 key episodes I want to discuss in more detail. Let's start off by looking at episode 5, The Convention. Here, we are properly introduced to the Coven system, which rules the way witches are allowed to use magic. Basically, you pick a coven to join, and you are rewarded with the specific perks of belonging to them, but you lose the right to use other kinds of magic. The most prestigious of those institutions is the Emperor's Coven, which only accepts the most talented witches, and it just so happens to be the one that Amity is training to join. Amity truly believes in this magic system and hates it that witches like Luz and Ida can get by without belonging anywhere. She despises the things that Luz represents and constantly insults both the girl and her friends. In order to get Amity to apologize for the things she said, Luz challenges Amity to a duel. If Luz wins, Amity says she's sorry, but if she loses, she'll give up learning magic. This episode is great at showcasing how opposite these girls can be, with Amity fully belonging to her system and her path, and using her magic to berate the misfits and keep them out, while Luz is considered an outcast, but still uses whatever skills she has to fight in the name of others. This same relationship is also mirrored in the girls' mentors, with Luz being watched over by Ida, a passionate outcast with great potential but who has to deal with her own set of disabilities, and with Amity studying under Lilith, Ida's sister, a high-ranking member of the Emperor's Coven who is determined to keep the order and fight whoever disrupts it. When the girls duel, Ida helps Luz survive by cheating, since the girl barely knows any spells, but Lilith also cheats in the name of her student, despite Amity having no idea she was being used. Both are disqualified and they sit down to talk it out. Now, we get a chance to truly see how different those two characters are, but also how they can be similar. They both share a passion for learning and spellcasting, and they're both very hardworking and dedicated, constantly trying to prove themselves. But while Amity wants to prove her worth to others, Luz is doing it for no one other than herself. We get to see this dynamic in action again in episode 7, Lost in Language. We follow Luz as she heads to the local library, where she discovers a new facet of Amity's personality. The girl who has shown only animosity so far is found reading to children, sharing a story about a creature who finds friendship through books. Luz is surprised by this, but Amity seems less than pleased to find herself being caught. We also meet Amity's older siblings, and we see how much they enjoy bothering their little sister. Amity, who's so well known for bullying others, has a couple of bullies herself. As the twins push Luz towards exposing Amity's secrets, Amity becomes really upset and calls Luz a bully too. Here, the show completely flips our perspective on the situation. While we've been used to following Luz around and seeing how much trouble Amity can cause in her life, now we see that Amity feels the same way about the human girl. After all, Luz has been nothing but disruptive and constantly gets her into trouble too. After this encounter, we start to see Amity in a different light. The ways in which she is the same as Luz become much more relevant than their differences, especially now that we can see the way they think of each other is so similar. The main enemy in this episode is a book character that comes to life and starts threatening the rest, attempting to trap the girls inside of a book. This is the same character from the story that Amity was reading to the children. Odabin is a shy and hardworking creature that learns to make friends with the power of literature, but he's been turned evil thanks to the careless actions of other antagonists. The girls turn him back to normal by apologizing and undoing the harm that had changed him, and he peacefully returns to his story. Luz and Amity go through a similar process throughout this episode. They are also dedicated kids who have trouble making friends, and who act meaner than they should because they've been treated badly by others in the past. Amity thanks to the actions of her family, and Luz because of the actions of Amity herself. They learn to be kinder to one another by trying to undo the harm they had done. They also bond over literature, since they share a taste for the same book series. While Luz, along with the audience, learns more about Amity, Amity is also learning more about Luz. Their paths are connected and they are growing together. After their library adventure, Amity states that she might have judged Luz a bit too quickly, and in the following episodes, we see that she's actually making an effort to get to know the human a little better. As Luz tries to get accepted into Hexside, Amity is surprised at how much she has learned and encourages her to learn more. When Luz is finally accepted, Amity welcomes her and congratulates her for getting in. Luz has no trouble being friendly towards Amity now, and Amity seems to have learned to appreciate Luz for her qualities. Like, really appreciate her. Really appreciate her. Which finally leads us to episode 16, Enchanting Grom Fright. Hexside has a major school event called Grom, in which a student is chosen to be Grom Queen, meaning they have to fight Grometheus, a monster that rises once a year and must be stopped from terrorizing the town. This year, the chosen warrior is Amity, a fact that brings her great sorrow. Not only because it ruined her Grom plans, but also because Grom can turn into your worst nightmare, and Amity's fear is too big to face. The only way to free her of this task is if someone else offers to do it, and Luz is more than happy to do her this favor. It's interesting to see how far the two of them have come. Luz has always been known for fighting in the name of her friends, but while she was much more likely to fight against Amity in the past, now she's actively fighting for Amity. Luz starts training to fight her worst fears, and although she's gotten much better at using magic and has come prepared to battle a great deal of imaginary enemies, nothing could have readied her for the most terrible nightmare of all, having her mother discover that she's been training to become a witch. Ever since Luz went to the Boiling Isles instead of camp, she hasn't found the courage to tell her mother the truth. That scenario is too painful to handle, so when Grom forces Luz to face it, the human runs away in terror. Amity is the one who comes to her rescue, once again taking her place as Grom Queen, and is forced to confront her biggest fear as well. In her nightmares, her invitation to go to the Grom party is rejected by the object of her affection. The only way of defeating Grom is by working together, as Luz and Amity join forces in a fighting dance, using their powers in unison to defeat the monster. What's truly interesting here, aside from the best dance sequence in the history of animated shows, is that Luz and Amity's nightmares are essentially the same. They both fear that a loved one will see them for who they truly are and then reject them for it. Because of this, working together truly is the best way of defeating the monster, for it proves that they don't have to go through this journey alone. Amity, who had never had the courage to stand up for her friends before, throws herself into battle for Luz, just like Luz herself had done for her, turning enemies into friends. They learned from each other, and they changed together. And to the surprise of no one, but to the delight of many, the person Amity wanted to invite to Grom was none other than the human girl herself. The relationship between Luz and Amity works because it was given time and space to grow, showing how the girls could be initially considered rivals and justifying that rivalry with the text, but letting them find out how much they have in common, learning to truly appreciate one another for their similarities and admire each other for their differences. This process was written with great care, and it never feels rushed or unjustified. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Owl House made history. The show is currently airing on the Disney Channel, which is a direct representation of the Disney brand. And Disney as a company has a long track record of being anti-LGBTQ. Despite many members of the community loving Disney and even relating to its movies and shows, the company is mostly known for drenching their villain characters in queer archetypes while keeping their heroes cis and straight, including references to LGBTQ characters only in recent films and limiting their presence to a scene or two, and shutting down most attempts to have those kinds of stories be told in a major way. Alex Hirsch, the creator of Gravity Falls, spoke up about the issues he has had with the company in the past while also developing his series for the Disney Channel. The network would explicitly forbid him from including queer themes in his work, as much as he wanted to, and all of his attempts to do so would be censored out. That's why it feels so refreshing to see these kinds of stories being tackled by such a huge network, finally granting these creators the space they have always fought for and the chance they have always wanted. Dana Terrace, the creator of the Owl House, has always been straightforward when it came to her wishes to tell a queer narrative, and to see her thrive instead of being shut down makes me feel not only thankful for what we've got, but also excited for what's to come. Luce and Amity have come a long way, and they still have a long way to go. We've gone from enemies to not quite lovers, but to one-sided crush on a painfully oblivious character, and every step of this journey has been incredibly entertaining to watch. All that's left to do is wait for Season 2, and from what we've seen so far, I think it's safe to say it will be totally worth the wait. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. If you have enjoyed the video, you can do those cool things such as clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. If you really like what I do, you should consider supporting me on Patreon. I have linked it down in the description and I highly recommend you check it out. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love the Owl House. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!
What kind of chosen one should I be? Should I be full of optimism and goodness? Or should I be like a bad girl chosen one with black nail polish and a mysteriously withdrawn attitude? I act like I don't care, but I secretly do.